I'm going to be peaceful no matter what. Get out of my way. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Fire Pit Chat with Ben and Joe. I'm Joe, and hey, Ben, how are you?
Doing well, Joe. Good to be back.
Yeah, it is great to be back. Certainly, a lot of things have
Mm.
happened or transpired. We put together those episodes on the election coverage. We looked at hate. We looked at the Serenity Prayer in 312 and 70, and certainly, hopefully, those things were helpful for people. I know that they've been helpful for me, you know, but they're certainly not a complete toolkit or a resource kit. But today we're looking at or starting another series. It's called 12 Steps to Peace. We're going to look at some other tools that may be in your toolbox to help you go forward, and maybe even ask the question, why? Why would I want to do that? And Ben, one of the things I've noticed is going on, and I just want to circle back to the election a little bit. Is this there's this fervor, right? This fervor, this fever pitch for information that's external, and what's going on with this, what's going on with that, and there's this great there's just a great unknown. We don't, we just don't know what's going to happen. And as we were putting this together, I was wondering, what if, right, in an ideal world, or maybe this is heaven, I don't know, but in an ideal world, what if that fervor that to find this external information or external confirmation or something outside of myself, what if that fervor was channeled to find inner peace? Right? What would that fervor be, to build an inner sanctum where I feel safe and secure? And the big question too, when we talk about 12 steps, is even why would someone want to do that?
Well, I love your metaphor of the toolkit. Going even behind the toolkit to a mindset that is necessary to be a builder. I think we've all met people in our lives that they're constantly staying constructive. They care about the big things of the world. Obviously, they're invested in those things, but they seem to have this ballast, this, their feet on the ground. But, and this is something you've been just constantly coming back to throughout our discussions, is that comes from something that comes from within. It comes from a certain posture toward the world, a certain inner equilibrium, I guess you could. And so it's not, we don't just need tools for, what to do with our actual lives and to build something, to whether it's building relationships or building other things. We have to build, if I can put it this way, kind of build ourselves. Like we build out our inner life. We furnish our inner space, and how we do that. Boy, if things are jumbled and chaotic and messy in there, and you just keep pouring information into a disordered soul.
Right.
I think we've all been there. It's just nothing fruitful comes out of that.
And the idea, I think, is that creation is external. Creation is happening out there. And yes, right, trees are growing and leaves are falling and creation is happening. But there's a whole nother realm, I guess, of creation that's inside.
Right.
I saw this video once. It was a long time ago, and they started on the Earth and they went all the way out deep space, through the camera traveled, and you saw just how big outer space was. And then it turned around, came all the way in, and then went into the body and went all the way down to our smallest cell. And so creation isn't just external, and we can't necessarily wait. We may not want to necessarily wait for a creation and waiting for a certain social norm to change or go back or go forward. It's from within. And so it's, how do I create myself? And if I'm living that life of creation, then I want to be interested in creating myself, as you said, build myself.
Well, and I think that I don't remember where I read this, but there was an ancient concept that man is a microcosm, that each of us is a kind of little cosmos, that there's a whole universe, you could say, of inner life. And there's a lot that could be said about that philosophically, but I think, your emphasis has been really helpful on what are you doing with that? That is a sphere of creation, of or maybe cultivation, tending, kind of gardening the soul. So yeah, and I think that's what we kind of want to do with this 12 steps framework, is just think of it as a tool in that arena.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have been talking a lot about framework and context, and this is certainly part of that. I think one of the paradoxes of this is that peace isn't necessarily acquired, through force of will, right?
Mm.
Exertion of my
Mm.
will. I'm going to be peaceful no matter what. Get out of my way.
Yeah.
But it's also not a defenselessness. I'm just going to lay here
Yes.
and so there's a journey potentially that we
Yes.
want to go on, and there's going to be some actions parts, and then there's going to be parts of rest, and there's going to be some parts where faith is going to carry us over that chasm.
Yeah. Peace is not passive.
Right. And so that, and then it goes to, why would I want to,
Mhm.
and so, some of this is just, so if we jump into the 12 steps and, certainly about the 12 steps that they were initially, I'll say in this current form, formed around 1939. And it was around the group for Alcoholics Anonymous, and certainly many groups, whether it's Debtors Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Smokers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, have adopted them in some way, shape, or form.
Mm.
And so you don't have to be an alcoholic or an overeater or a
Yeah.
gambler to use this
Yeah.
framework. Right. There's some really good parts of this framework that if you are looking to make a change or even questioning if I need to make a change, then this could be a framework that could work for you. And it may be something, you want to explore. So that, I think that's part of it is that framework, because one of the things, that they'll say in Alcoholics Anonymous in the 12 steps, the word alcohol is only referenced in the first step. The next 11 steps are all
Mhm.
about spirituality, house cleaning, maintaining that spirituality. And so when we look at the steps, and if someone may say, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm not a gambler, I'm not an overeater, whatever that is, the substance is the way in,
Yeah.
whatever that is, and it could be that, it could be an addiction, could be compulsion, could be sin, it could be something that I just can't stop doing. And
Mhm.
I think I'm the only one who knows that I'm doing it.
Mhm.
And sometimes we're the last to know, other people see that in us. So it could be that's the way in, that's the doorway in. And I think that's a really important piece, just when we think about this concept of 12 steps, and maybe somebody saying, hey, I'm not an alcoholic, or these other
Yeah.
things. I don't need this.
Yeah. I mean, you're far more trained in this than I am. But as I've reviewed the 12 steps, it seems to me that they're kind of big principles, or we could say tools too, of just self care, self tending, building out that inner world, as we were saying. And I think it would be probably kind of self deceiving for any of us to think we don't need tending.
Right.
I'm good. I don't need tools. My inner life is all set. I mean, I think anyone who's self-aware would realize that's, probably a pretty ambitious claim. So I think it's very interesting to me, your idea that these have expansive application way beyond sort of the obvious crisis of, a narcotics addiction, or something like that. And my word, as you and I have talked over the months, it's been so illuminating for me as a pastor to think about some of the things that I talk with people about in counseling, and just life in Christ, and growth in spiritual growth, how it overlaps with some of these principles. So I think this will be an exciting discussion.
Yeah, so the 12 steps really can be broken into three, say, smaller parts, and it's sequential. So the first part, the first three steps are spiritual steps. And it's really important to spend time, right? I tell a lot of people, time takes time. Building
Mhm.
that spiritual relationship takes time. And as we talked before, there's some parts of that are action, and some of that is rest. And in other words, I'm not going to get spiritual overnight. I'm not going to surrender, turn my will over overnight. It's going to be over time. And for everyone, that time is different, but it
Yeah.
it is. And so that first part is that build that spiritual foundation, and having that strong spiritual foundation. Because what I have found in my life, I can't really change or grow if I don't have the spiritual foundation. Now I can, through the force of my will, for a time, change my behavior, but it
Yes.
always feels uncomfortable. It feels tenuous. I'll
Yes.
say to my wife, I don't want to jinx it. you know,
Yeah.
I don't want to jinx what I'm saying here. And so we can, I believe, I know I can, and I have had periods of life through my own will or willpower
Mm.
or lack of willpower change my life, but it wasn't sustainable. And the difference I found is that spiritual foundation, from that spiritual foundation or base, much can flower and grow and create.
One of the things that I have spent a lot of time thinking about over the years in light of that is, if I'm the problem, how can I be the solution? And that's kind of always the challenge for us as human beings, when you realize, okay, I have a problem and I'm kind of the problem.
Right.
So how's this going to get fixed? And I think, this initial spirituality component in the steps it seems to me it's a way of acknowledging right up front, I'm going to have some resources that are coming to me as a gift, as we've said before, as opposed to just kind of this self-generated, kind of grind out my own program for self-reform. I mean, the way I put it to people is, look, if it's one thing to be in a storm if you're flying a plane, but if your instrument panel's broken, that's the problem for us as humans, is the instrument panel is part of the problem. It isn't just the external storms. And
Well, and in that analogy, right, if the instrument panel is broken, you probably call the tower, right? And the
right,
tower guides you in,
right,
and you can't
precise.
see. And
Somebody else
so,
navigates, right?
yeah, because I can't see, I need someone else who can see, or
Yes,
something else that can see, and that's part of that spiritual base to guide
yes.
me in and bring me in. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like, I think in some ways it's easier when there's a glaring
Mm-hmm,
addiction issue or
mm-hmm.
compulsion or something. I think it's much more it's more covert, I guess, if it's a
Yeah.
sin. And I've had and looked at, lately in my life, is some of these sins or some of these flaws or some of these, in recovery, some recovery groups call it defects of character that I
Mm-hmm,
have.
mm-hmm,
And eventually, I reach a point, hopefully, that I want to stop doing that or being that. I
mm-hmm.
can't stop doing that. I just don't have the power. If I had the power, I would have stopped a long time ago. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily just, drinking or drugs or eating necessarily. It's something that I know it nags at me. And so if there's something nagging at somebody and they want to make that change, this could be a framework that works for them. And this beginning is the spiritual part. And it's not just going in your basement praying. Like we said, there's some things to do.
Mm-hmm,
There's some
mm-hmm.
really good teaching, and I think in the first three steps. So then we move to house cleaning. When I built that base, I've got that spiritual base, I've got that relationship. It's beginning to build a relationship with myself. And then the middle six are about house cleaning, which a lot has to do with cleaning out my past, and certain things I've done to others, certain things that I keep doing to others, and I need help to do that and clear out my past, and my future. What I have found in working with a lot of people over the years is that there's two relationships that are really broken, and one of them is the relationship to themselves, right, and the relationship to God. And so
Mm-hmm.
that first part, we restore our relationship with God as best as we can, and that's a lifelong process.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start to restore the relationship to myself by understanding myself, and
Mm-hmm.
then really start helping myself, and then I make amends for myself. So it's the house cleaning, and it's that internal house cleaning. I think a lot of the focus today is that if only the outside was
Yeah.
clean,
Yeah.
right? If only there weren't these things happening out in the world, I
Yep.
would be at peace. But there is a model and a framework that teaches, no, if I clean inside of me, I clean my own house,
Mm-hmm.
I can be at peace. And I think that's missing. I don't think people sort of understand that or have experienced that.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. Without denying that we talked about this before, without denying that we are affected, of course, by our situation, and some of that I think we just have to be humble enough to acknowledge. Yeah, I mean, we are tiny little earthbound creatures, and things do affect us. Relationships affect us. We're not Teflon proof against all of that, but and we've I've just appreciated your constant emphasis on this. You always can tend and cultivate and ultimately choose your response, and that is where you hear this in so many stories where people have been through things that are unthinkably severe, and yet they are able to come out of those experiences with growth and with a sense of purpose, and even finding meaning in their suffering. Well, that's springing from within.
Right. Right. And that's where, again, we get back to what we said earlier, creation, there's sustenance,
Mhm.
right? If I have that spirituality, that energy is always going to
Yeah.
flow to me.
Yes.
If I take the time to build my own internet to God, right? Or my own internet into that spiritual energy of the
Mhm.
world.
Mhm.
If I build that, and then I have to get rid of all my old, I'll use a technology now. I have to get rid of all my old routers, all my old
Yeah.
PCs, right? I need to
Yeah.
have, and that's what that house cleaning is. I got to get rid of the old technology and put in new technology, and that takes work.
It can also be pretty surprising the things that God will put his finger on. I mean, I was just reflecting a moment ago as you were speaking. Some of Jesus' strongest words were to Pharisees. Is they were a particular religious sect of his time who really thought they had it all together. They thought they were straight up with God, and he had to say to them, those who are righteous don't need a those who are well don't need a doctor. Those who are sick need a doctor. There is such a thing as being so full of your own sense of wellness, you don't even see that you need a doctor. And one of the things God might start, one of the old routers he might start throwing away is your sense of just kind of having it together. It might be necessary to, begin this inner cleansing and inner inventory with just this deep awareness that I'm kind of full of myself.
Right.
Maybe my strengths are my weaknesses sometimes, and just being open to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I was talking with somebody this morning. I said some of our greatest strengths are also our greatest weaknesses,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's important to know. And there's a softness about this, right? So
Yeah.
that's the other thing is, if I go into this well and I'm working with other people that are in the same idea, we get back to the 3-12-70 type model. If we find or build other groups or people that want to do this and can support us in this, there's a softness about it. There's a laughter.
Yeah.
Many people have been in 12-step meetings, and the laughter, and they'll say when they first start coming around, I can't believe how much laughter there is,
Yeah.
because there is this piece of us that knows that it's okay. We're
Yeah.
we're we're in, time takes time. We're in this place of growth. There's
Mhm.
refuge here. Not that everything is okay, but it's also that relationship of,
Mhm.
when I define what's okay,
Mm.
I usually come up short. But this kind of framework can help with that. Can help with that a long time. And there's a certain softness about it that doesn't exist when I'm on my own and beating
Yes.
myself up, and
Yes.
and really I'm suffering without any avenue for healing. And I
Yes.
think the difference is this suffering or
Yes.
this challenges or this pain is within a plan, and
Mhm.
I've got now a framework to grow, learn, have fellowship with other people, and work through this together.
There's a sense in which you're being pulled out of yourself. Right. Part of how you develop a healthy self is in part being pulled out of yourself. Someone once said that it's not God is not so much it's not God's work in us doesn't so much make us think less of ourselves, it makes us think of ourselves less, right? I mean, it's just being less self-focused is like growing in that, and the tremendous freedom that comes with that. Like Tim Keller wrote a book called The Freedom of Self, and I just always find that so interesting. And I'm sure we'll come back to that as we go through these steps. But yeah,
Right. Well, there's a saying, I'm not much, but I'm all I think about.
that's great. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yes. And so then the last third of the steps talk about just our lifelong maintenance of spirit. So there's some real actions there. There's a lot of faith in that last group of steps. There's about personal inventory and just taking the lessons I learned, right? So along the way, I'm not just house cleaning. I'm
Hmm.
learning about myself. And then how do I keep those lessons? We say keep them green. How do I keep those things
Yeah.
green in my head so I can pull them back out when I see myself? Because I'm human. I'm going to go back and do those other things again. I'm not necessarily cured, but because I've got that relationship, I've got that softness, I've done the house cleaning, I understand myself better. I now that last third is it really helps me understand and align myself in a way with God,
Hmm.
perhaps that I didn't, or wasn't able to access before when I was on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. You've helped me kind of think through the cyclical nature of this kind of healing and growth. There's always movement and progress, but it's never we've arrived now. The train's in the station. And it's been interesting to me talking with you now for a few years, and hearing you articulate kind of where you are in these growth cycles, and and as a pastor and just as someone who's grown myself, I can really relate to that, and I think it'll be exciting as we go along to talk about that dynamic of movement and progress, but a cycle where you're anticipating this will continue. I will be back at step one, even anyway. You've
No,
talked.
absolutely. Many times and many times. I worked with a guy once who said, "Your progress is none of your business." He said that to me. And his point was to let go, let God,
Yeah.
right? And but also be in the process. If I cut my hand, I don't have to do anything other than put a Band-Aid and clean it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
day by day,
Yeah.
that cut will start to heal. And
Yeah.
then within about time, I'll never see it again. I
Yeah.
didn't have to do anything to make myself heal. And so it's just keep doing the work. I kept it clean or I put the Band-Aid on, but I
Mm-hmm.
just need to follow the principles, follow the
Yeah.
framework, and that will lead towards healing and growth that, as they say, are beyond my wildest dreams.
Yes. Amen.
All right, so let's put a wrap on this first episode. So we gave you an overview of the 12 steps. Their roots, again, just quickly, there's really three parts. The first part is building that strong spiritual foundation. The next part, house cleaning, and that's cleaning my own house, looking at myself, getting better relationships, restoring relationship with myself. I restore relationship with God in the beginning. I restore relationship with myself, and that final third is restoring relationship with the community, and throughout the process. So that's just a little overview. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other steps and really more about the framework. But I'm really glad that we got to do this, Ben. I think it's a good start.
Yeah.
And I look. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, just with you. I'm very excited to kind of work out some of put some flesh on the bones, as it were. I think this is a great series of topics to go through. So,
Everybody, thanks for listening in, and we'll see you next time.